Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter where you're at, thank you for clicking on this video today. My name is Matthew Bonnick. This is another one of the Construct Hub highlight videos. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Datadog construct. So if you're using Datadog as your observability platform, you'll probably want to take a look at this construct because it helps you instrument your Lambda functions as well as an easy way of registering CloudWatch log groups with their Datadog forwarder. So we're going to start off by just taking a look at the web page. I'll show you how to use the construct in an example repository, and then we'll talk about kind of pros and cons of the whole thing. All right, so jumping right in here, we can take a look at the construct hub page, and we can see right away that the construct is currently available in TypeScript and Python. It doesn't look like they're publishing for Java or .NET or Go, but hopefully that'll change in the future. The README page here is really good. They go through great examples of how to get things installed, both for Node and for Python. They also show you good usages. So scrolling down here, I can see a full example of how to register and create the Datadog construct. This will create a couple of different resources within the environment, and things like you set up your environment keys, your API keys, other things like that if you want to override specific versions of Node or Python Lambda layer versions and things like that. And then when you're all done, you just add Lambda functions to it through this helper function, and you can go ahead and instrument out your Lambda functions automatically. So if you want to use the Git source code integration, the way they recommend it is by using an async function. I've done this a couple of times before where you wrap everything up into a new async function and then you call some sort of a waitable function call. In this case, it's going to go down to the file system and look at some of your Git commit histories. And then you, after that await is done, start to create your CDK app and example stuff and things like that. I generally recommend against doing this sort of thing, but in this case, it's necessary and it's only making a local file system call. It's not going to go off and make a network call or anything else like that, so it's relatively safe to do. They've got a good description here of all the various configuration options, good links, really helps you get this thing up and rolling. Very good documentation in this case for this construct. If you want to get additional tracing information on your Lambda functions, they make it very easy. You just enable that tracing on the Lambda function itself and takes care of everything itself. Finally, they put in some details in here about how to set up some tags like environment variables and service so that you can correctly get some good tracing and integration over in Datadog just fine. Finally, if you have other log groups in your system that you want to have forwarded over into Datadog, they give you a very easy helper function for doing that, this add forwarder to non-Lambda log groups. Then at the bottom of the README, they cover how you can contribute changes to this construct yourself. They do use Progen for doing the management, which is very cool. Glad to see that even Datadog is seeing the power of Progen in their project management. They cover some details about how to actually do those changes, as well as opening issues and a contributing section of this document. They do have tests around all of this, so they encourage you to use tests during your development. And then finally, you've got some options for debugging. If you want to join their community, they provide you a link right to their Slack channel and everything. All right, so let's go in and take a look at an example of how you can use this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and reuse the code that I had during the last video about the intrinsic validator. So same idea. If you're not familiar with that, I suggest you go take a look at it real quick. See the architecture of what's being built. Basically, there's just a Lambda function in here that will trigger off a media convert job whenever an S3 bucket object gets dropped into a specific location. So let's go take a look at what it's like to actually instrument that Lambda function in Datadog now. First thing we're going to do is pass over a Datadog API key from our environment into our stack. So this would mean that anytime that I synthesize this stack, I would need to have that environment variable set. This is an easy way to go ahead and keep Datadog API keys out of your code, but of course you need to make sure you have them in your environment anytime you do a synthesis, whether that is synthesizing locally or within pipelines. I'm just going to go ahead and pass that in on this Datadog API key variable. And now I'm just going to go ahead and instantiate a new Datadog construct. So I'm picking Node layer version 81. I just picked the latest one that was referred to in the documents. I do go ahead and specifically say to add in layers, to enable Datadog tracing, to enable logs. So here I'm going to set the environment as dev, although this is probably something you'd want to hand in as a property on the construct. Additionally, I've got the service set up as transcoder. This is probably something you don't need to change. And then finally, I go ahead and just add that Lambda function to my Datadog construct, my previously used Lambda function. I had to expose the underlying Lambda function from this transcoder construct, but that's an easy property to expose. I'm going to go back to my unit tests, and I'm going to see how the snapshot changes by adding in this Datadog construct. So first thing is I just need to go ahead and update my test to include a Datadog API key. In this case, I'm just going to add in junk. Doesn't really matter too much if it's an actual valid key. And I'll go ahead and now run my test. Now at this point, it's a snapshot test. I should start to see an error come back. Okay, so now I can see that there was a bunch of new stuff added into my snapshot. I can see that it automatically added in a number of new environment variables to my Lambda function, including a Datadog API key, this capture Lambda payload, flush to log, and so on and so forth. The handler itself has now also changed. Instead of using the index.handler, which I provided, it's going to go ahead and use a handler that's part of the Datadog layer, as well as adding that layer reference in itself. So it's actually replaced my handler with the Datadog handler, and then that Datadog handler is what's going to actually call my handler function and cause this wrapping automatically for me. Finally, I get an additional tag added into the Lambda function for which Datadog construct is being used. And that's it. Everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and update my snapshot. All right, so now that that's in place, let's go ahead and deploy this out to an environment and see what happens. All right, so now that it's been deployed and our intrinsic validator went ahead and tested all of our code, including our Lambda function, we can come in here and now see that we've got our tracing and our logs here in Datadog, and I can click into any of these messages and see all the nicely parsed information that I'd expect to see. Additionally, I can also come over here into my infrastructure now and dig into the details of each of those executions. So I can see their runtime duration, I can see what triggered them, I can even go in, and because I had that tracing turned on, I can see exactly how the Lambda executed and what it took the longest time on. So I can see it took about a half a second to describe those endpoints for media convert, and then about another 600 milliseconds to actually go off and create the job. And about 300 of those were just making that post call to the endpoint service. So I can dig into all of my functionality within my Lambda function and really try to speed things up, make them work faster if I need to, or optimize them in any way I need. So really nice integration to have this built in. All right, so that's it. It's a fairly easy construct to use, fairly easy to get integrated into your existing code base. As you saw, I just created that one construct, and then I just added my Lambda functions to it directly. A few notes: you do need to have your integration with AWS already set up, which means creating that CloudFormation stack with the Datadog forwarder Lambda already created before you do any of this. It's not going to do that portion for you. Additionally, you do need to make sure that's all configured and set up properly. When I was originally doing this, there was actually a misconfiguration that I had to work through first before things would start to work over. But once that was taken care of, now I've got all my logs and my tracing and useful information that I can now tie into, and it didn't really cost me much to do. So hopefully you found this useful. If you did, please give me a like. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, please go ahead and subscribe. It does really help me out, helps me understand what kind of content that you're liking. If you have any comments or if you have any suggestions on what I review next, just leave it in the comments below, or you can reach out to me at Matt Bonig on Twitter and recommend what you want to see next. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.